I've gotten the same size, and I left some of the original saw marks on there. Makes it look a little bit more rustic. And I'll beat these up with a chain, kind of scuff them up a little bit so they look a little bit more rustic. The only thing that concerns me is I got to cut a mortise on the end of this, and it's roughed up, but we can handle it. And same thing with this side here. These are, you know, probably 3 inches too long anyway on purpose. So we're going to cut a lot of this back stuff off. But there we go. Now we're going to remove these braces, and I already noticed that this is loose and the nails aren't loose. What's happened is the nail hole wobbled out, so that even add more racking to this. So we've got to figure out how to take these off without boogering up the original surface. And we're going to try a crowbar and some wood and I don't know what else. We'll get it off. I think that might work. Yeah, so I'm afraid of. These things are super old. I'm going to leave these nails in here, and we don't need to really get in here. I'll try to work them out a little bit later. It's not critical that we get those out. If it was critical, we got them out on the other side. These are the nails that were critical to get out because the joint's going to be cut into here. So, and also notice that this thing started wiggling around. So this brace will fix all this wiggling problem. Upon further inspection, I found some warp or something in here, and that could be original to the loom. Look at that. We'll have to get a thread expert to find out what that is. What else I can find in these joints. That's really cool. It's my guess that this is a draw boring dowel, but I do not know for sure. We want to keep the orientation of the dowel. Alright, I forgot to mark this when I took it out. So we'll mark this. There we go. So we know which way it goes now. Okay, when do you think the last time that thing was off? And I haven't dumped this out yet. There's a little wedge in there. I'm not an archaeologist or a bugologist or a whateverologist, so I'm going to save whatever's in there. Just in case someone needs to look at it for whatever reason, I don't know. But we got it apart, and now we have to inspect the joint, make sure everything's good to go. That's some fibers right there. That is really cool. I've got that pretty much square, and we ran into a little problem. This looks like it's possibly cut with an axe, and if it was cut with an axe, it's an older loom than I anticipated it being, not unless that was cut at a later date. You can see the gap that's underneath there. If this is square, this top support is going to lean down. Also, you can see the draw boring is no longer there once I raise and put my shims in there, it's going to raise this up. It's going to change that hole, so when I put the dowel back in, it'll squish it together. Also, there's a huge gap here, and I don't know if that gap runs all the way through the joint or if that's a piece that's broken off. I'm assuming it's a piece that's broken off the way that this is shaped. Also, the measurements with this being square, from here to here is a different measurement from here to here. So we'll have to decide what we're going to do about that situation. I'm afraid to put the brace in right here, because if I can't get the nails out on the other beam on this, we'll have to move this brace. We can't move it forward. We got to move it back farther than I thought. So before we do any serious work on this side and insert our braces, cut our tenons, we're going to take this brace off the other side. This is the same procedure as on the other side. My attempt is to use the wood to clamp and hold those nails and pull all the nails at the same time. That's why I'm doing this side first, because once it starts to flex, it puts tensions on that other side on those nails, and it breaks them. It starts to crack in them, and there we go. They're coming out. I think one broke off. Oh, that looks like two broke off. You can see they broke off. Two of them broke off. And there's definitely nails in there. So these are the two that broke off. That's how long they are. So the nails probably go back to here. I probably won't start my joint until here, because there's no way, I mean, yeah, you can't get those out. So I have to, instead of putting the joint where I wanted to, I got to put it way back here. And I don't think I can go forward to this. There's also another nail there. I might be able to go right here, because these nails go at an angle. And makes me nervous to try to cut that joint with the nails in it. I might be able to cut the joint, and as I cut it, expose more of the nail and then try to pull it out, you know, that kind of thing. They're exactly, this joint, this thing is exactly where I wanted my my brace. Let's rethink this. I can use that wood to pull them out. Nope. Oh, there we go. Okay. All these fragments I'm saving. All this stuff. Oh, it's more thread. Is that thread? Yep, more thread. That's awesome. So I've got this jar, and I'm putting all the fibers that I find in this jar for the museum. I don't know if these are historic fibers or fibers that was yesterday. But any of the fibers, there's a lot, here's one right here. Any fibers that I find, I'm going to save for them. There's one squished right here. Oh, I dropped it. I'm sure they want this stuff. So, don't want to lose any of it. Found some more. And I'm not sure how to separate this or why it's so squished on there. And there's a lot on here. So brittle. Look at all this. Oh, that's going to be cool. So I don't know if this was the, you know, hand spun. So this nail looks like it's about 3 inches long. So I'm gonna go like 3 1/4 inches long, and we're gonna see how far it is in that joint. I'm trying to determine where the nails are. So if this was here and about like that, and the nails come in at about that angle, plus the thickness of the board, and if I get my little stick here and put it on here, so to be safe, put it right where the nails are. So they would enter about right there. So the nails probably at the maximum go this far. So I'd have to start my joint on way over here, which I don't have a choice. I have to do it here, or I can do it right where the nails enter and start cutting my joint right here. I've got to make sure that doesn't get in the way of the beater though. We have to determine that. As I'm sitting there examining this thing and looking at it, I've noticed these marks. I don't know if these came through its life, but this definitely are marks to cut this joint. And this is where the craftsman ran it around the other side to cut that joint. You can see here where it comes up, where they knew where to drill the hole. Also here, this almost looks like a hand-hewn area before they actually flatten it out. This might be a hand-hewn piece. I'm not sure, but as I look at it with these marks, not unless these marks were added later in its life, if these were put on here when it was made, then it was definitely a hand-hewn thing. You can see in the lighting, these cuts, it might be from a hand adze. So that's really interesting. And I love seeing the old markings for the joints. That's really neat. We're going to take the other dowel out, and I've got a space between the vise and the bench for that dowel to drop into. Let's see what this side holds. A little bit easier to take this one out. Keep the orientation. On the joint I just took apart, it's really interesting. You can see these half-mooned kind of shape parts in there. I'm like, I thought it was maybe with a gouge. I'm thinking, you don't make joints with a gouge. And it occurred to me, they used a bit. They used a bit like this, and we'll make one like this shortly. You drill through until that tip comes through, and then you do all of them. The tip will come through. Then you get your bit, you turn it around, and you put this little, it's called a snail, in that hole. And you can see this turn part here where the craftsman went through with this side and then drilled the rest out. Once that's done, you come in with a chisel and you chisel everything else out. So it's what I suspect is the bit started going at a little bit of an angle into the joint where the craftsman didn't want it to go. But it went to just far enough where I could take it out, go from the other side, and then chisel it. I now squared up this joint, and we're going to have to put spacers in here, spacers in the front and the back of the joint. And also I reestablished the jaw boring dowel. You can see down inside that joint that top part of the joint, the hole, this hole is offset just a little bit. So when I drive that dowel in, it's going to pull this together. So let's cut these shims and get this repaired, because I want to do one complete side all assembled, and then we'll do one side, the other side, then we'll put the two halves together. And this is important that this is tight right here like it's supposed to be. I'm going to get these little strips of oak. I'm going to use the drum sander, and I'm going to get them to the exact thickness I need to fit in here and on the other side, and we'll work on these. And then this joint will be set, and then we will lightly glue these in, and then we will cut the brace. But I got to get this joint right, and this jaw boring is exactly where I want it. It's slightly off center here, so when we put that peg back in or dowel back in, it should squish this thing together and it should be tight and square. A little bit more. I'm going to go ahead and make these cut all these to fit, but that's the method that I'm going to use for it right there. I've got it about as square as I can get it. You can see down the beam there, it's a little wonky, but that's okay. I've got the spacers cut to fill in, and some of these are tapered because it's just the way that the joint was, And now I'm going to cut a little wedge that goes into here. I've already started cutting it. I'm just going to use a hand plane and cut a wedge here and here. It worked before I took it apart. That's the way that it was. I'm going to put it back that way because this seems pretty solid, except for down here. So once this is cut and wedged and I can figure this out, we'll cut the brace that goes down and across the new braces that we're going to install. I've been adjusting shims for about an hour, and I think I finally have them adjusted perfectly where we have just enough of draw boring here. We don't break anything. So I'm going to go ahead and glue these in, but I'm not going to heavy glue them. I'm just going to put little tack glues, and I think I'll tape it to keep it down for my clamp. And while this dries, we'll do the same thing to the other side. We don't want to put a lot of glue on here. I've got them glued and clamped, and while that dries, we're going to work on the other side and do the same thing. This is the other side, and this draw boring in here is backwards. Watch when I raise this. There you go. You can see the inside of that hole. It needs to be about like that. So when we draw that dowel in, it squishes this together. I just did the second one off camera, put the spaces in just like the first one. So now it's going to be assembly time as soon as that dries. I just put in a dowel, and it is definitely now draw boring because this thing is super solid. This side is really solid. Super happy with it. You can see how the bottom of that dowel is not straight. It's at the bottom. You see how the dowel is not straight? It's more at the bottom because it hit the inside of this tenon and is squishing this joint together like it's supposed to be. And that's super good. This thing is super solid now. This thing is solid now. This thing is awesome. Now we've got to get the other side done just like this. We can measure it and we can put our braces in here to make it extra strong. Super excited. Showing some progress. That's awesome. I have to position where this brace is going to be. So we ran into a little issue because if I measure from the back of this beam to the edge of the new support, that's 28 inches. And if I measure the back of the beam to this side, it's 28.5 inches. However, when I get my plumb bob, and I put my plumb bob on here, it shows that the board is straight. And the problem is that the original beams aren't straight, I think. So if I get this and I let my little plumb bob go down, let it hang free, that shows that this board is straight. So I'll lean it back. So to have this board straight up and down, it's going to be a 1/2 inch off from the top and bottom. A little 1/2 inch out farther than it is going to be the top. And I think that is because the reference side isn't exactly straight. It's a 1/2 inch off from here to here. So I think we're going to position this board right here on this side. We'll do the other side, and I'll mark this, and then we'll take it apart, put the joint in, and then we'll assemble the other side and do the same thing, and we'll get it to exactly where it needs to be. But this is going to be a little bit sideways, which I don't think is going to be a problem. At least this board will be vertical, and that's how we're going to do it. So, and we do have a problem with the other beam because there's nails in there, but I think I figured out a way around that. Even positioning the supports where they need to be. Remember, the beater bar is going to be here, and it's got to have room to move, so I can't have this support too far forward, and I don't want it too far back. Traditionally, they had a very decorative, solid piece of wood that came from about here to here that was in the corner that gave the support. This doesn't have it. Someone had put these boards in at a later date to keep the thing from racking, and this obviously failed because all the joints were loose in here. This will fix that issue. So Let's mark the other side, assemble and mark the other side. I'm just going to put a little pencil mark on the bottom and the top of where my joint goes. I'll do the same thing on the top. And then once I cut my joint, we'll razor it. So I just want a reference line of where I'm supposed to start my joint. This is the other side of the loom. And I forgot, I can't put this and measure this brace on this side until I fix this. I forgot that this side had to be fixed. So we're going to focus on the joints on this one, on the bottom of this right now. Fix all this wobbliness. And it looks like this one probably has to be fixed like the other side. It's all tore up. This joint is completely ripped out on this side. So let's take this off and see what's going on with this one. And then we'll do the same thing we did last one. We'll fix this side and then we'll go back and fix that side. Looks like this one is almost just as bad as the other one. So we're going to have to do a complete repair on this one too. And it's really super loose in the joint. So we'll do the same thing. We'll cut it. We'll cut a shoulder. We'll sandwich it, put a piece in there, rebuild this whole thing out to 9.5 inches where we did the other one. We're going to try to smooth some of this stuff out. It's really kind of chopped up a little bit. This one is a little bit worse in some ways, a little bit better in some ways. You can see the wear of this thing inside that joint, how it's thinner right here. This thing's been wobbling around in there for a while. So this thing's got to be flattened. So we're going to work on this joint for a minute. We're going to do the same repair on this one as we did the other one. And there's really not really a flat surface on this to reference from. I'm going to do the best that I can. I'm going to cut this thing pretty far back. And I know I got to go from once said and done from here to here about 9.5 inches. So I'm going to put me a cut line. And I'll cut all this old stuff off. And I'll repair just like I did last time. So we're going to go ahead and cut this, all this material. Let's get that done. We'll cut it here. And it's going to be crazy. We may have to cut it again. Same thing on this side as the other side. We just have to find us how far we want to cut back, which probably on this one is about here. And then all this will be cut out and overlapped so we can extend the joint. So I'm going to go ahead and put my line here. One of the issues is there's really not a straight surface to reference my marking gauge off on, my marking knife. It's kind of a sideways line I'm going to have to deal with here. I've been trying to mark the end. There's nothing flat to reference off of. So the way I'm going to handle that situation is I'm going to cut down to my line on these sides here, and then I'll come back when I chisel this out and make this joint. I'll straighten it as I go, and I'll have to just pay real attention, close attention not to take it too much off and to make it flat. So that's how I'm going to handle that. I'm going to cut this joint back but instead of using hand tools, I thought that I would use a router on this one. A lot of people don't have the hand tools that I've got, and they probably have power tools. If they don't have hand tools, they're going to cut wood somehow. They're going to use something like this. It doesn't have to be DeWalt. It can be anything, just any kind of router that you want to use. I'll show you how to cut this joint using this tool here. A lot of people don't have tools like this. You know, I normally buy vintage. This is a vintage one, I think at 15 or 20 bucks. It wasn't sharp. I sharpened it, tuned it up. It works fine. This is a brand new one. It's like $80, $85. I think I got this at Rockler. Old chisels you can get super cheap. Sharpen them, tune them up. Got a whole variety of different tools. This is my tool cart. I've been adding to it for years, and I change it, add to it, take stuff out, add more to it, get more stuff, don't use stuff, change it up. I've been using this tool cart for a long time. It's taken a long time to build this tool cart. A lot of people don't have these kinds of tools. They have power tools. I've got all these planes up here. I've got this shave horse that I built a super nice traditional bench. So a lot of people just don't have this kind of stuff. So let's go ahead and get the router going. It's a plunge router. You don't even need a plunge router. You just need a router if you want to do this. This really is not a flat reference surface. So I've got to be super extremely careful when I do this. So I'm going to reference my tool here. You see how this kind of rocks? I've got to make sure that I can route all up in here, just like this with this tool. We're going to take a very small amount off at first, and we'll go full depth. This is my power router that I use if I need to use a power router. I don't use it a lot, but I have a lot more control. I feel better using this one. But this has a real small flat reference surface to it, and I can make a bigger reference, a bigger plate. Rather than do that, we're just going to go up to this guy and use the plunge router, and we will route this down nice and easy with this guy right here. I like collecting old tools. I like collecting old chisels. I like making my own mallets. I like doing all kinds of stuff. You don't have the time or the patience. You don't feel like doing anything like that, and you want to go the cheaper route, easier route. This is a Harbor Freight chisel. I started with these things. I still use them. You can see they're all kind of messed up. I normally use these to pull glue out of corners and chip glue off things. I sharpen this one up just so this, for this example, you don't have to have a mallet like this. Have an everyday hammer. So let's clean this up with a Harbor Freight chisel and an everyday hammer. Got my bevel down. I'm going up. Now, when we make our part, we can stick it and glue it on right there. Just with some cheap basic tools, you can do the same thing. I mean, really 3 tools and a router, so that's 4 tools. You can do this if you're not a hand tool guy. You can still do this kind of work. Now I've got this joint cut. The cheeks and the shoulder look good on both sides. I'm going to cut 2 pieces of wood, and I'm going to sandwich another one in the middle, and we're going to extend this out 9.5 inches just like the other side. This is a duplicate process the other side, so I'm not going to film this so I can go a little bit faster with this joint, and we're going to get this one taken care of. It's been overnight. I'm going to take the clamps off, and this side is going to be the same exact procedure as the other side. Now I'm just going to clean it up and cut it to length and then see how it fits. Got this joint finished. Now I got to fix all this. And I'm going to do the same thing as I did last time. I'm going to put shim underneath, shim it from the inside here, tighten this joint up, do the same thing on the other side. So it's the same procedure as the other section. So I'm not going to shoot that on video. It's the same exact thing that I did. So I'm just going ahead and get busy and fix that. Just like on that other side, I cut that hole back a little bit so when we put that peg through there, that wedge, it'll pull it tight. I put my spacers in. That's a massive spacer that I had to put on the bottom. Put a little real thin one on the inside. Same with this one. I've marked the hole. I marked the line where I need to drill my hole. I've got it clamped together so I can know exactly where that goes under tension. So we're going to drill this out, and this side should be already complete. So this side should be done, and then we're going to put the braces that go to the top to the bottom on this. Since we've taken this brace off, and that was put on after the fact, and it's failed, and 2 nails have stayed on this side, but I'm still going to cut the joint here. I've got this lined up exactly how I need to get it lined up with the plumb bob, and I've got my distance where how far I want to come out. So this is where this brace is going to go. We'll go ahead and mark this up. And since we're cutting the mortise with a machine, we'll cut the tenon with a machine too, because there's nails in it on this part, and we're going to use those metal drill bits. We'll cut this side with that machine. I don't want to go any bigger than this chisel. I think if it's too fat, we're going to compromise the integrity of the brace. So I'm just going to set up my marking gauge to the thickness of this chisel. Oh man, it moved. And we will mark the end grain with this chisel right here. I'm going to mark the end of the tenon, how wide it's going to be. I go from one side, then I go from the other side. And if both those lines meet in the middle, we found halfway. I've already set that up. So I'm just going to score my lines. I'm going to set this up with a machine so you can see how to do it with a machine. I've cut one tenon in a test mortise, just to make sure everything fits together before I commit to the real part. Fits nice and snug, there's no loosey-goosey. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the other side and show you how I do that with a machine. This is the side I just cut, right? And I've already got it marked where it goes. And I've already got it cut to length, so let's just go ahead and put this on the jig and go ahead and cut this. If nothing moved on the tenon jig or the saw or anything, it should cut perfect. Let's find out. We've got both sides cut, and then we just have to insert them. So we've got to mark the middle and put our tenon in there, our mortise, and she's set. I'm going to do the ones with the nails in it first. There's 2 nails. You can see where this is broke off, and that's where that was. And there's a nail here and a nail here. I'm gonna have to be contending with this one nail. I think I can get around this one, but we're gonna have to use tools, a metal drill bit. I've already got my layout lines on the side. I've already set this tool up, my marking gauge, so I know where to cut my mortise. And I'll have to make this darker so I can see what I'm doing. I'm coming in and kind of exploring where that nail is, and I don't think I've hit it yet. I might be lucky. It's right there. I may do this by hand. I don't think the nail is going to be anywhere in this area over this far, but we don't know. The nail is right here. And I don't know if it curves over. I couldn't feel it when I went in here, so I'm gonna start and I'm gonna work my way back to it. I'll start, like, I guess right there. I think I can clear the nail there. Let's find out. So far, I don't see it. It's right there. I'm nervous about going to the next one. I have nothing to do but do it. I don't think I'm going to have to do this by hand, but who knows? I'll do the other one by hand just so you can see how they did it. You can see the nail that's broke off right there, and it shoots off this way. I missed it completely. So I'm going to continue on with the dedicated mortiser, drilling square holes in here. And once this side is done, I will use the machine for the other half of this race, and then we'll do the other one by hand so you can see how it was done by hand. But this is what I was nervous about. So we missed it. That's awesome. Golly, it almost fits. It's a little tight. A little tight. I widen it a little bit with a chisel. Let's see what happens. It's going to be super tight, which is good, but we don't want it like really, really unbelievable tight. And hopefully it's deep enough. That's awesome. Okay, we got one in there and we didn't hit a nail. That's amazing. I didn't hit a nail, which is pretty awesome. It's as square as I can get it. I think this is going to be perfect. And we're going to do the other side and assemble it and see how strong it is. Oh, we have to drill the drawboring dowel in there too. And I've already marked around how deep the part goes. And we're going to find the middle of that square rectangle, so we know where to drill. And I know you can't see it on the camera, but I can see it. And this will tell us where to drill our hole through here, all the way through, and then we're going to put our part in, mark it, pull the part back out, offset the hole, and we'll show you how that works. This drill bit barely goes through, so it's kind of sketchy, so I may have to come in with an auger bit with a brace drill. I'm going to use this, try to keep this as straight as I possibly can while I go in. I don't want it to break the grain, so I'll flip the board over when that tip starts coming through. I can feel it. Just in case this failed, I had this ready to go. And all right, let's mark the other hole. I've marked this joint so they go together, and they'll go together forever now since they're paired and matched together. So we'll always put it together with like that. You want to squish it down with the drill bit that we drilled this with. It's got that little tip that's a brad point bit. We're going to put this in the hole, and we're going to mark the tenon inside. There we go. If I can get this out. Oh, God, that's a good fit. Now that's our mark that we just put on there. Now if I were just to drill through there and put it back into the joint, and I would have put the dowel in, the dowel would be lined up with all the other holes and eventually start to flop around. To do drawboring, you offset the hole that you marked closer to the shoulder on the cheek. You move it this way, so when this goes in, it's kind of gonna pull this joint into, it's gonna pull it into the joint. So about the width of that hole, how big that hole is, I'm just gonna move it over like just right to the edge of that hole. That's all you need for something this small. That'll offset it enough. We don't want to offset it too much because we'll break something. Ah, got away from me. This is why you don't want to go all the way through, because that's what it does. It got away from me that time. Okay, we have an off-centered hole. Oh well, okay, she'll be all right. So now when we do drawboring, it's going to pull it into the joint. I've got everything assembled. The only thing that's not in is this one wedge because it's hitting the bench. But other than that, everything is together and tight. I do need to put the drawboring dowels in there. The dowels aren't in there. Other than that, I think everything's done. This thing is super strong. I don't think it's going to rack anymore. I think it's going to be completely successful. I'm going to do the other side. I am going to disassemble this and color match the new parts to the old patinaed parts. I'll cut these mortise and tenons, these two, this tenon and the mortise that goes into by hand, so you can see how that's done rather than using a machine. I've already cut the other side of this tenon down on the bottom side here. So we'll do this side. Now obviously I've already put my layout lines on here. I laid my joint out. So now let's remove some material. We don't know which way this grain's going to go, so I got to start way at the end here. Start splitting this down. This is a perfect example to show you why that vise is such at an angle. So when you have long parts like this, it can go all the way down and through. And when you put it in here, it doesn't hit the screw part that goes through the vise. You can put it off to the side and you can do wide parts and long parts on this vise. That's why that thing is designed that way. And this is a Nicholson / Raubo bench. I kind of used both design features of both the benches and put it into one when I built this. But anyway, that's what that's for right there. It works really great for exactly this purpose.